Hare Krishna. So today we're starting our last book here in the Bhakti Shastri course, the Nectar of Devotion. And we saved this one for last because it follows on the heels of the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, which we covered last. At the very end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reasserts the point of the whole Gita, that one should take up exclusive devotional service. We heard that referred to by various terms during the Bhagavad Gita class. Sometimes it's called Ananya Bhakti or Kevala Bhakti. Here Rupa Goswami is going to call it Uttama, the best kind. So otherwise it's kind of exclusive as Ananya or Kevala, and or pure. We hear pure Bhakti. So there's mixed bhakti and pure bhakti. So we heard about that, talked about that, a lot of different types of mixed bhaktis and things during our Bhagavad Gita course. And so here, Rupa Goswami he's going to begin his work with a definition of this Uttama, the best kind of bhakti, the pure Kevala, Ananya. These things all this refer to the same thing, and then he's going to discuss it in detail. So it's kind of a natural follow-up from Bhagavad Gita. Today we're going to study the preface, the introduction, and the first chapter. We're going to cover 19 chapters in all. We're only going to cover one portion of the Nectar of Devotion here for the Bhakti Shastri. The preface is, Prabhupada wrote, it's completely separate from the Nectar of Devotion. It's just meant to be a preface of his work here, and he gives a little bit of background of what the Nectar Devotion is and how it came about. The introduction, however, is really the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that Rupa Goswami writes, that Prabhupada has summarized here. Prabhupada says here that the Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. We should remember that same author as the first book we did, Nectar of Instruction. It was written by Rupa Goswami. And Prabhupada says that Rupa Goswami first met Lord Chaitanya at Prayag, on the Shashva Meda bathing ghat of that holy city. The Lord instructed him continually for 10 days. And then Prabhupada says, later Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various Vedic literatures. And he says, it is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be very solidly situated in Krishna consciousness. So what's in the Nectar of Devotion is based on what Rupa Goswami heard directly from Lord Chaitanya, and then he elaborates and supports it with his profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various Vedic literatures. A lot of it comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he supports all the different points, but it's based on the teachings he received directly from Lord Chaitanya. So it's a very powerful work here. And then Prabhupada, he gives an exposition on what Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu means. He gives us an understanding of what the book is about by breaking down the title. And so he starts out, he says Bhakti, he just says means devotional service. Or to Krishna. He says means devotional service. And then rasa, he says, is a kind of mellow or relationship whose taste is very sweet. Rasa literally kind of means juice. Sometimes he says it's a taste. So it's some feeling of pleasure. And Prabhupada says, every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service. And the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it, the rasa. He says, the relish or taste of the mundane rasa does not long endure, and therefore mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. So he compares the kind of rasas that we're familiar with, the pleasant things of this world. And he's going to contrast that with the bhakti rasa, the rasa that comes from devotional service. And so he says, the mundane workers like us will change their position of enjoyment. He says this position of changing back and forth is technically known as bhogatyaga, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. And he says sense gratification does not endure for long, and it is therefore called chapalasukha, or flickering happiness. And then he gives an example. He says, for example, an ordinary family man who works very hard day and night and is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family, thereby relishes a kind of mellow, but his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates along with his body as soon as his life is over. So here's the second thing that's a problem. There's two problems with really two problems with the material rasas, the normal rasas of this world, not bhakti rasa, and that it says the happiness just doesn't last. It's flickering chapalasukha, and so then we're always changing our different, trying to enjoy in different ways. He mentions that somebody maybe works all week long and then takes the weekend off and and does something else. And so because it doesn't persist, we get bored with things. We switch from one attempt to enjoy to another. That's our usual way. When he says here renunciation, he says that it seems to explain more. The mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. So it's not so much that we try to enjoy, and then we try to become great renouncers and give up all material enjoyment. That doesn't happen so often. It's more often that we find we get bored with one thing, or we think something else will be better, and so we renounce the thing we're trying now and pick up something else, try to enjoy something else. He says they do something else on the weekends and go back to work on the weekdays, or something like that. It's more like that than a full scale. Like I'm going to try to enjoy, and now I'm going to try to be a renunciant. That happens in some cases, but that's fairly rare. So it's more the switching back and forth from one type of material enjoyment to another. And then he mentions the other problem with it is that it ends with as long as the once death appears. So it's a temporary situation. And then he contrasts it here with the bhakti rasa. And he says that bhakti rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa enjoyed by mundane workers. And he supports it. He says, bhakti rasa, however, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita. So you see, it's bhakti rasa amrita. Right? So it's bhakti ras amrita. So it's amrita means without death, literally, or it means like immortality, or eternally. So even that aspect of it is baked right into the title, that this bhakti rasa continues. And he says there are 12 kinds of rasas, as will be explained in this book, and by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, or relationships, we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. And so that would indicate, of course, going back to the spiritual world, as Krishna mentioned many times in the Bhagavad Gita. But Prabhupada also explains elsewhere in the preface that, and also we heard the same thing in Bhagavad Gita, that if we begin the process of devotional service, and we do not come to the point where we can go back to the spiritual world in this life, we pick up where we left off. So he says, even in that case, it's eternal or immortal. It persists even after our death, even if we take another material birth. And then he doesn't mention the word Sindhu in the preface, but it means ocean. Actually, he mentions it. There's a place in the text where he He calls it the nectar ocean of devotional service. But he doesn't mention it directly in the preface, but it means ocean. So it indicates that eternal bhakti rasa, is huge. It's basically unlimited. So there's so much of it, so that there's no chance of running out of it. Right? So we're not going to get bored with that. So there's an ocean of this bhakti rasa that's available to us eternally. And then at the end of the preface, he ties bhakti just towards our nature, a real fundamental part of our nature. He said love. So he gives an interest. It's really eloquent here. He has a couple of quotes here, just really beautiful. He says, the basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. And he says, and that's what he says. So he's going to tie in the notion of devotional service with a very primary need for everybody. He says the missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can become happy. And then he gives an interesting analysis. He says, in the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters. And as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, maybe his society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all human society. He says that loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved, which is Krishna. And he says, our loving propensity expands. I think this is really poetic. Just as a vibration of light or air expands. Right? Gases expand, or if you have a ray of light, it kind of shreds out. But we do not know where it ends. The nectar of devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. We understand how that is. From Bhagavad Gita, we understand that Krishna, how he's the source of everything. So if we love Krishna, we love all of his creation and all of his entities. So he says this is a full satisfaction of our desire to love, and it's expanded to the greatest extent. So that's why he says that the nectar of devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. Krishna says all the living entities are his parts and parcels. Mamavangsha jiva loke in Bhagavad Gita. So our love will expand to the greatest degree by focusing on the source of everything, Krishna. And then he says the nectar of devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything everywhere. It's that if we know Krishna and how everything is connected to him, then the way we view everything else changes. He says it's like flipping a switch and makes everything brighter. Now we feel that the world is a kind of hostile. Right? We feel, people may be hostile to us. But when we see how everything is connected with Krishna, the perspective changes immensely. And it says, nectar of devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything everywhere. One who does not know this method is missing the point of life. And of course, the more people that flip that switch, the brighter things get. The more devotees there are. And now, so that's the preface. The introduction of the nectar of devotion is the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Actually, it's a part of the work that Prabhupada is summarizing. The preface is his own work to introduce it, but the introduction of Bhakti Nectar of Devotion is the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it doesn't give this particular. It starts with first there's the Mangalachran, these auspicious invocations that Rupa Goswami does. And then it starts with a definition of Uttama, or pure bhakti, which is the focus of the whole work. We said it followed from the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna was recommending this. And so in the verses actually in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Prabhupada is included in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, We don't see the verse translated directly in the Nectar of Devotion, but I've included it here quoting it from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, just so we can take a look at it. And Prabhupada talks all about the verse in the Nectar of Devotion, but he doesn't quote it exactly. So it's Anya Balashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dyanavritam. Prabhupada quotes it many places. Anukulyena Krishanu Shilanam Bhaktir Uttama. When first-class devotional service develops, that's Uttama Bhakti, the highest type of bhakti, one must be devoid of all material desires. So Anya Balashita, it means ulterior motive. Some Anya Balashita, you want something besides devotional service. I'm worshiping Krishna for something else. And Shunya means without those things. So without any kind of ulterior motivation. We talked about that. You can have karma mishra bhakti where you're looking for something material. You can have jnana mishra bhakti where you're looking for liberation. Yoga mishra bhakti where you're trying to gain the powers of the mystic powers that can come from yoga. You can have these various other desires that you want to have fulfilled by worshiping Krishna. Krishna can fulfill my desires, and these are what I want. And then it's jnana karma dyanavritam. Anavritam means, it says in the word for word you'll see says not covered. And so this talks, we were talking about this a lot in the Bhagavad Gita course, that people can still be attached. Arjuna, Krishna tells Arjuna that he should sarva dharmam parityaja, give up all other types of dharmas. So some people, even though they can be devotees of Krishna, they're attached to certain elements of other processes. They feel they're required. We talked about this quite a bit in Bhagavad Gita, that they think they still have to perform the karma activities. They have to have the renunciation. They have to have their power of yoga. And we said that pure bhakti means that we simply rely on Krishna. If we please Krishna, everything is taken care of. There's no other extra methodology you need. You don't have to be a great yogi. You don't have to be a renunciant. You don't have to be a great doer of pious activities. Pleasing Krishna does everything. And so we fully rely on Krishna's mercy. He helps us in so many ways. And so it's not covered over by any other extraneous process. And then anukulyena krishnanushilanam. So there's anukulyena, which is, Prabhupada says, is favorable, and a cultivation in service is a Krishna anushilanam, cultivation of service in relation to Krishna. So he says, when first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy and fruit of action. So he's talking about the jnana karmadi there. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So we'll see that this last part is interesting. Serve Krishna favorably and as Krishna desires. Those two things are important in the definition. And we'll see that as we go through Prabhupada's explanation. So this is the definition of first class or Uttama Bhakti, or pure Bhakti, as we'll hear it referred to quite often by Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, first of all, this devotional service is a sort of cultivation. The particular word used by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is anushilana, or cultivation by following the predecessor teachers, acharya. That anu means following. That's what it means. And so if we are following the great acharyas, or people who are experienced in devotion, we do what they tell us, we follow their example, we can be certain of doing the things that Krishna desires. So the part is, as Krishna desires, is satisfied. They know how to satisfy Krishna. The persons who are closer to Krishna know how to serve Krishna properly. And so we follow their example and their instructions, and therefore we can be assured that we're serving Krishna as he desires. Okay? But we have to do something. Right? We heard that also in Nectar of Instruction. It's service. It's an active thing. It's not just a sentiment. It's not just a feeling. We have to act on that feeling. If you really love somebody, you have a feeling, but you act on that feeling. So it's not just it's not just a vacuous thing like that. then Prabhupada says, those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. And then he breaks it down. He says there are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. A Krishna-conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called kirtan. And by his mind, a Krishna-conscious person always thinks of the activities of the Lord, as he is speaking on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or engaging in his various pastimes in Vrindavan with his devotees. So by body, words, and mind. Similarly, we can offer many services with our bodily activities, but all such activities must be in relationship with Krishna. This relationship is established by connecting oneself with the bona fide spiritual master, who is the direct representative of Krishna in the disciplic succession. Therefore, the execution of Krishna-conscious activities with the body should be directed by the spiritual master and then performed by faith. So again, he's stressing this anu part, that that devotional service is not something we can do whimsically. It's a well-understood activity. It goes on eternally. People have been doing it eternally. Krishna has been existing eternally, and so it's known how to please him. We're not inventing something. This is not scientific experiments here. We're trying to try this works, if that works. It's known how it works. It's a well-traveled path and a well-understood path. So if we want to succeed, we follow the tradition that's been established. It's just sensible. And then he says, the purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably. So this is the thing. We said, as Krishna we had to serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So the Anushilanam part means we'll serve him as he desires. We're following the tradition. But he says then it's possible not to be favorable. And so he gives an example. The purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably, but that cannot be counted as pure devotional service. Then he gives an example. He says, for example, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa, and Hiranyakashipu were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking cannot be accepted as bhakti or Krishna consciousness. So the point is, and we even know there's a backstory to Hiranyakashipu, that there were Jai and Vijay who were cursed, and they're the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. They, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, had a desire. They said they know that the Lord likes to fight, but there's no fighting in the spiritual world. There's only fighting in the material world. In the material world, there's nobody who can fight with him. We're all too weak. They said, well, we could fight with him, but we have a problem. We have that. He's our worshipful Lord. We can't have the right attitude. When you fight, you have to be think of an enemy. You have to think of him as an enemy. You can't. Otherwise, you just play fighting. You have to really be into it. It says we don't have the right attitude. And so the Lord understood their prayer and the desire. It also was in line with his desire, and so he arranged for them to be cursed, so that they could be born as enemies of the Lord 3 times. So they would be able to fight with him, and they would have the right attitude. So they actually were pleasing the Lord. Hiranyakashipu and these other great demons, it was fun. When the demons would come to Vrindavan and Krishna would kill them, it was fun. All the cowherd boys were happy. Everybody was happy. So that's service. Right? But it's not favorable service. That's why the 2 things, it has to be favorable and it has to be pleasing to the Lord. So they did things that were pleasing, but that wasn't their intention. So it has you have to please him and you have to intend to please him. That's in order for it to be real devotional service. Those 2 things are important. You can please him, but without wanting to please him. And that doesn't count. Right? Now he talks about the Anyabalashta Shunyam part. He says, pure devotional service should be free from the desire for any material benefit or for sense gratification, as these desires are cultivated through fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. He connects the 2 things. He says, karma or fruitive activities are sometimes understood to be ritualistic activities. There are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas. But if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. So here he talked about the first and the second line of the Anyabilashita Shunyam. First, he says that so there are some types of karma mishra bhakti mixed with karma, that is wanting the fruits of the karma. Right? You want something material, or in jnana you want liberation. Okay, so he mentions the karmis and jnanis. They can be mixed by wanting the fruits of that. Then he mentions that sometimes people are just attached to those activities. So he mentions the karmis are attached to those activities. So therefore, they're doing things different than devotional service. It's a separate enterprise. And so that means it's covered by that. So that's jnana karmadi anavritam. The adi part, actually if you look at it, I think, maybe go back to the what does he say? Yeah, adi, he says, by artificially practicing detachment, by the mechanical practice of yoga, by studying the Sankhya philosophy, and so on. It just means and so forth, and other such things. Karma, jnana, and other such things. Adi is like that. That's how. And here he breaks it. So it could mean detachment by the yoga system, studying the Sankhya philosophy, and other things also. So it's like that. So there he mentions the second line where he says karma or fruit of activities are sometimes understood to be ritualistic activities. There are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas, but if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. So it's covering over. If it's a separate enterprise, it's covered. So that runs afoul of the second line of the definition. And then he says, Srila Rupa Goswami has also mentioned in his definition of bhakti the word jnana karmadi. This karmadi, fruit of work, consists of activities which are unable to help one to attain to pure devotional service. Many forms of so-called renunciation are also not favorable to Krishna conscious devotional service. So when you have some other separate process that isn't an integral part of bhakti, but you somehow think you need to do that, then it's covering your bhakti. We talked about that. There's quite a few when we went through the Bhagavad Gita of persons like that. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur identified them as they're still attached to their yoga practice, or they're still attached to this, or their jnana practice. Okay. So there's the two different types: ulterior motive and trying to take shelter of another process. And then Rupa Goswami says that when we talk about service to Krishna, it's too limiting to think of it just as Krishna with two hands and a flute. And so Prabhupada says, when we speak of Krishna, we refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead along with his many expansions. And he says, and he says that it means, ultimately it means everything. He says, but what we actually worship is not everything, but he says, we should, generally, however, we should understand Krishna to mean Krishna and his personal expansions. Because everything actually is Krishna's energy, his expansion. So he says, actually Krishna is everything, but what we worship is Krishna and his personal expansions. And he says, so Krishna includes all such expansions as well as his pure devotees. Krishna is never alone. His devotees are integrated with him. So bhakti also means worshiping his devotees, serving his devotees. It's not just Krishna. Sometimes especially when we begin the process of devotional service, we think we are doing something so wonderful, and we are now connected directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it makes us feel a little self-important. And we will think that others are not so important anymore. Now I have God, why do I need you? But the devotees of the Lord are also objects of service. And then he mentions also things connected with Krishna are worshipable. He says, the impersonalists sometimes misunderstand devotional service in such a way that they divide Krishna from his paraphernalia and pastimes. Krishna does not mean just Krishna alone. He is always with his associates in paraphernalia. A devotee may be interested in the paraphernalia and locations, such as the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which are associated with Krishna. But he is not concerned with simply any battlefield. He is concerned with Krishna, his speech, his instructions, etc. So places and things that are connected with Krishna are also worthy of worship. We go to pilgrimage at Kurukshetra. And then there's another verse. I quoted this one also. It doesn't appear like this in the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada quotes it. And I did this one because Prabhupada uses this. This is one verse that he quotes very frequently throughout all of his writings, and so I thought it was interesting to take a look at. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchite. And there's a dual meaning in this verse. It's interesting, and because generally it's considered this to be kind of another statement of pure devotional service, another way to express it. And so another confirmation. Rupa Goswami gave the Anya Palashka Shunnam one, and this one also, taken in one way, is kind of a restatement of that. Prabhupada takes it also as a description of what happens when we take up devotional service. Because we find out that when we take up this pure bhakti, we become purified. You don't have to be pure to take up pure devotional service. Because pure devotional service purifies you. So Prabhupada, and you can see in his word-for-word translation how the two meanings are present. So it says Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam. Usually Prabhupada says, he says free from all kinds of material designations. That's the usual way that he refers to it, and that's what he includes here. He says free from all kinds of material designations, or free from all desires except the desire to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's Anya Balashta Shunyam, same thing. Usually he takes it the first way. That's how he usually explains it, but here he's mentioning it. Then tat paratvena, by the sole purpose of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nirmalam, uncontaminated by the effects of speculative philosophical research or fruitive activities. So doesn't it sound familiar? Right? And Rishikena, by purified senses, freed from all designations. This sounds like more like the second way he takes it. Rishika Isha, the master of all the senses. Sevanam, the service to satisfy the senses, and bhakti, devotional service, which it is called. So the way he translates it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of the senses. So this is Rishikena, Rishikesha. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is free from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So here he's stressing, in his smooth translation, he's stressing the way you can take this as being the effect of pure devotional service. It purifies the senses, and it frees you from all material. That means all kind of false misconceptions about your identity. That we are actually eternal servants of the Lord. We think I'm Ravi, I'm Giri. You think this? I have this body. I've been born such and such. I come from this country. All these things are material designations. We are all eternal servants of the Lord. And so pure bhakti purifies your senses so that they can be calibrated to the spiritual plane, and they purify our understanding of ourselves. So Prabhupada gives us that, but what really Rupa Goswami took it more as a second statement of pure devotional service, which we can see that in Prabhupada's word-for-word translation, how that comes about. If you follow his, it's free from all desires except the desire to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, uncontaminated by the effects of speculative philosophical research or fruitive activity. That he has in the word-for-word. He doesn't put it in the smooth translation. So that's why Prabhupada did this. He sometimes puts little different meanings in the smooth translation than in the word for word, and then he sometimes explains further in purports. So he shows all the different meanings of a particular verse that way. So I thought it was interesting to go about to take a look at that verse for this reason. Prabhupada really likes this verse, but so Prabhupada says one should be free from all material designations, and by Krishna consciousness must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. When our senses are engaged for the actual proprietor of the senses, that is called devotional service. And he says, when one is fully aware that he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy should be employed not in the interests of so-called family, society, or country, but in the interests of Krishna. And the reason why this is Prabhupada's way of looking at this verse, and presumably this is other acharyas have said the similar thing. That's how Prabhupada gets these things, is that it shows kind of how bhakti develops. We're going to find out that when we do start bhakti in practice, we become purified. And because we become purified in this way, our bhakti becomes natural. So at first we start our bhakti because we understand it's the right thing to do. And as we get free from the designations and our senses become purified, we realize that's our eternal occupation. It becomes spontaneous. It increases in intensity and purity. So it's a nice way to show that the effect of this pure bhakti, how it works, and how it naturally then uncovers our real identity, and bhakti becomes not something we endeavor for, but it's something that comes directly out of us. It's our real nature. We are bhakti. Lord Chaitanya says the jivas are, their actual swarup, actual form is servants of Krishna. Nitya Krishna Das, eternal servants of Krishna. That's what we are bhakti. If you want to put it simply. We are bhakti. We're devotees of Krishna, right? And so what do? We perform bhakti. So we're personified bhakti. That's really what we are, eternal servants of Krishna. Jiva Swarupa Hoy, right? Yeah, we are servants of Krishna. That's what we are. So it's not something that we do in the sense of right now. You have a job, you do a certain thing. That's not your eternal nature. I might do something else. It's not my eternal nature, right? But bhakti is our eternal nature. And so when we uncover all the things that obscure our real nature, then bhakti just happens naturally. That's who we are. And that we'll see when we study the different stages of bhakti. Okay? So we'll try to wait for the questions at the end. Actually, we don't have anybody on the line, but we'll still do that because we have quite a bit to cover today. So now we're coming. Now that took care of the introduction. Now we're starting chapter 1, and that's what we'll be covering today. We won't go any further than that. Characteristics of pure devotional service. And first of all, Rupa Goswami gives a kind of a general explanation. He says there are 5 kinds of liberation, namely to become one with the Lord, to live with the Supreme Lord on the same planet, to have the same features as the Lord, to enjoy the same opulence as the Lord, and to live as a companion of the Lord. A devotee, what to speak of rejecting material sense gratification, does not even want any of the 5 kinds of liberation. He is satisfied simply by discharging loving service to the Lord. That is the characteristic of pure devotion. The explanation of this is that they don't want liberation. They don't want liberation that isn't directly connected with service. Because because what happens is naturally by mature bhakti we will go to the spiritual world and have those things. That's by nature, but only if that increases our service. That's what happens when you go to the spiritual world. You have a spiritual body. You're able to be even more intensely engaged and stuff. So then it's accepted, but not as a reward for doing some other type of service, just so that the service can increase. So it's like that. That's what it means. It doesn't mean. Sometimes we hear, like in the Shikshastakam, how in the 4th verse that we simply want devotional service birth after birth. We shouldn't be eager to imitate that state. That comes at the state of ruchi, or strong taste. That comes out of somebody who has strong taste for bhakti, and that's a specific stage after the stage of steadiness. And so we too shouldn't try to imitate that. Sometimes we think we have to be so pure that we shouldn't desire, to go back to the spiritual world. But Prabhupada says we should do that. And if we come to the stage of ruchi, then naturally we may think this way. But we shouldn't try to imitate. When you try to imitate a stage above your level, you don't have success. As simple as that. Okay, so that's a general thing. This is how powerful a devotional service is. It's so satisfying that they won't even accept these very desirable things if it's not connected with devotion, making the devotion more intense. And then Rupa Goswami gives 6 qualities of pure devotional service, and they are We're going to hear in the Nectar of Devotion 3 broad categories of bhakti. There's bhakti, sadhana bhakti, or devotional service in practice, bhava bhakti, in ecstasy, and prema bhakti, in transcendental love. Those 3 broad divisions that he gives. And so the first 2 qualities are present in the sadhana bhakti, the devotional service in practice. The next 2 come into play, the first 2 plus the next 2 come into play at bhava, and all 6 of them are present in prema. You still have bits of the ones above you in the previous stages, but they're not strong enough to be mentioned. Okay? Like we'll see that there's strong happiness in bhava and even stronger happiness in prema. We get also happiness, the higher taste that we call it, in sadhana bhakti, but it's just not that powerful. So when it comes at a certain level, then we say yes, then it's super happiness. So here's what they are. The pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. It's called klesha agni, removal of all miseries. Pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. It's called shubhada. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. So it happens in bhava. Pure devotional service is rarely achieved. So durlabha. Those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation, and pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. And then Prabhupada gives a little purport to that last one. He says, Krishna is all attractive, but pure devotional service attracts even him. This means that pure devotional service is even transcendentally stronger than Krishna himself, because it is Krishna's internal potency. He'll discuss that in more detail, but I guess he stuck that one right in.
That slide 1 second. I'm just ready.
So now we'll start with the first one. And the sadhana bhakti means this is associated with sadhana bhakti, relief from material distress. And then Rupa Goswami breaks this down very nicely. And so he says there's various causes of distress. The first one, the root cause, is ignorance or avidya. And Prabhupada mentions, he says, generally one commits sinful activities due to ignorance. And then he says there is another evidence in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 3. If you're following along, you'll find I'm skipping around a bit in the section because I'm trying to order it in a way that's very clear. There is another evidence from the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 39, wherein Sanat Kumara says, "My dear king, the false ego of a human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by a strong rope. This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination." So the biggest problem we have, the root thing, is ignorance. That causes us to act wrongly and then causes further misery. Karmic reactions from sinful activities produce me. So the root of it is ignorance, which then attracts us to the performance of sinful activities. And Prabhupada says there's 2 broad categories of those. There's those, he calls them mature reactions that are causing suffering right now. And he explains that. He says the sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. And he says mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication. These are just examples. If one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is uneducated or very ugly. Anything else that's just distressing. So these are just examples. And he says, a person is born in a Brahmana family or in a family of dog-eaters due to his past activities. If a person is born in a family of dog-eaters, it is meant that his past activities were all sinful. This is called parabdha karma. Karma that's present right now, that we're suffering from right now. The reactions have become mature. They're here and they're happening to us. And then he says there's immature reactions which cause future sufferings. He says, there are the many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts, but not yet been arrested for them, Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting from him. So we've performed sinful activities, but we haven't got the reaction from them yet. They're in the pipeline. Okay? He says he is suffering in the present life the results of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further sufferings for his future life. Okay? So it's like that. So the ignorance causes us to perform sinful activities, which we're tasting now, and which we're going to taste in the future. Okay? Now, there's a second, more tricky effect of sinful activities. You get the result of the sinful activity, some punishment for it, but then something else happens as well. Your sinful activities produce a reaction which makes you more inclined to perform future sinful activities. This is called a bijum. So when we commit sinful activities, not only do we get a reaction that causes us to suffer, but we gain an inclination to do more of them. And this is really key. So he says, and the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires, which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce the seed or the effect of the seed. And a kutam is a general inclination towards sinful activities. And the bijam, or the seed, means you have a specific sinful desire. So like he gives people give the example, like maybe you have a tendency to steal. That's the kutam. And then when you see something to steal, that's the bijam. You want to do this precise activity. Right? So there's a generalized inclination that's called kutam. It's a little bit more general. And then when you get a specific sinful desire, then that's the bijam. And then Prabhupada says, for example, he explains that a person suffering from venereal disease on account of excessive indulgence in sex life has to undergo some severe pain and medical treatment. And he is then cured for the time being. But because he has not been able to remove the sex desire from his heart, he must again indulge in the same thing and become a victim of the same disease. So we, in one sense, more insidious than the sinful activities are the sinful desires.
So I did not get the example. Like which is Besam in that, which is Kotam?
Neither one. It's the same thing. Both things are the same in that case. But Prabhupada uses those two words, he uses kutam in the Nectar devotion. So I wanted to explain that. Then he says another example given in Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the elephant who enters into a lake and takes a bath very seriously, cleansing his body thoroughly. Then as soon as he comes onto shore again, he takes some dust from the earth and throws it over his body. Similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the sinful desire for sinful activities. And then Prabhupada says, and then an example of the effect of these sinful desires or the propensity for sinful activity is illustrated by Ajamil. In this connection, Shukadev Goswami speaks in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse 17, about the story of Ajamil, who began life as a fine and dutiful brahmana. See, so not so many mature sinful reactions there. He's doing pretty good. But in his young manhood became wholly corrupted by a prostitute. So the sinful, he didn't commit so many. Didn't have so many mature sinful reactions, but he had some desire in his heart to perform sinful things. He was easily corrupted. So this kutam and bijam were there, hiding in his heart, which brought him down. And then Rupa Goswami explains how Krishna consciousness removes all the above causes of distress. So that's what he was saying. This is that was the effect, one of the first of the 6 qualities. It removes all kinds of distress. We found out what they are. Their ignorance, their sinful reactions, and their sinful desires that come. There are different type of sinful reaction. Those are the 3 things. So then Prabhupada says, this ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed in the Padma Purana as follows. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment. And when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desire. And he explains there are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage, and the snakes are immediately attacked. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. And then only the devotees can cut off the knot of the strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritual performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be freed from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities. So these are both quotations from the scripture that Rupa Goswami gave to support the fact that Krishna consciousness removes the root cause, ignorance. And then we have how that Krishna consciousness deals with the sinful reactions. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 14th chapter, verse 19. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn into ashes unlimited fuel supplied to it." And Prabhupada says, the purport is that as the blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotional service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. So the sinful activities are removed by bhakti. Sinful reactions. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse 6, in which Devahuti addresses her son Kapiladev and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants about your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even if he is born in a family of dog-eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices." Now this is talking even more particularly, as we'll see, about the sinful reactions due to mature sinful reactions. Because then he explains, it says, if a person is born in a family of dog-eaters, it means that his past activities were all sinful. But even if such a person takes to the path of devotional service and begins to chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's best not to close that door tightly because it really makes a loud noise when it's open. He is at once fit to perform the ritualistic ceremonies. This means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized. Okay? So being born in a low-class family is mature, prarabdha karma, mature sinful reactions. So here it says that those are removed by devotional service. Now this one is kind of easy to see because usually it means that you have many other qualities, low qualities. Right? We heard about what the qualities of Brahman are, truthfulness and cleanliness and all these things. Somebody in a low class birth will not have those things. So the subtle body can be purified, the nature is changed, and good qualities can come out. We may ask about, before he said, what about somebody who's in legal trouble, chronic diseases, or being ugly? Prabhupada says, right? So does it mean that we become externally beautiful? Our diseases are cured and we win the lawsuit? We find that it doesn't happen that way. Right? So how are we said to be relieved from those things?
Subtle body purifies.
Well, no, but still, those are also mature. Those are mature prarabdha karma. Being ugly, being sick, or being in it. So, but it says those are cured. How are they cured? They're cured because we no longer are troubled by them, and if there's some difficulty, a devotee will use that difficulty to take more further shelter from the Lord. And beauty is one that also says bhakti is naturally attractive. So somebody who isn't even so super physically attractive, when they have bhakti, they will become attractive. And if you have some disease, or you have some some legal trouble, or some other any kind of difficulty, that allows you to take more shelter of Krishna. So it becomes, instead of being a sinful reaction, it becomes a way that Krishna uses to help you increase in your devotion. That's how that's reconciled. At the end of his wicked life, just by calling the name Narayan or Krishna, he was saved despite so much sin. This is Ajamil. Shukadev points out that austerity, charity, and the performance of ritualistic ceremonies for counteracting sinful activities are recommended processes. So it's possible. There are other ways that you can remove the sinful reactions, the overt sinful reactions. That's mentioned here. But that by performing them, which Ajamil was doing in his youth, one cannot remove the sinful desire seed from the heart, as was the case with Ajamil in his youth. This sinful desire seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting the Maha Mantra or Hare Krishna mantra as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he says, similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the desire for sinful activities. Neither the yoga process, nor philosophical speculation, nor fruitive activities can save one from the seeds of sinful desires. Only by being engaged in devotional service can this be done. So there are other ways. It's called prayaschitta, where you can atone for your sinful activities and counteract the gross results of them. But the subtle one that causes you to be more inclined to sinful activities can't be removed by any other process. This is unique. That's understood here in the Nectar of Devotion. So now the second one, Krishna consciousness is auspicious, the second of the six qualities of pure bhakti. This also appears in sadhana bhakti. These things, of course, will be more intensified in the higher stages of bhakti, but they're present to a large degree here. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. So there's actually, this is digressing a little bit. So there's two things that are really difficult to remove without bhakti, and that's the ignorance, the root cause, and those desire seeds. The causes of those really only bhakti deals with very well. And then Prabhupada says how the Krishna consciousness movement can attract the attention of the whole world. So it means welfare activities for all the people of the world. How the Krishna consciousness movement can attract the attention of the whole world, and how each and every man can feel pleasure in this Krishna consciousness is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they also become attracted by such a movement. So if somebody becomes Krishna conscious, right, they will generally try to share it with others. And if they manifest it, other people will be attracted, and it can help. It helps everybody. So it's applicable to everybody because everybody is at heart a devotee. And so it has this broad effect. That's auspicious, in all places and all times. And then there's a personal component, more personal component, that's mentioned here. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness acting in devotional service can develop all the good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. So if we have a whole lot of bad qualities, right, those are removed, and good qualities replace them. That's what happens. So we have bhakti is, and this is what makes bhakti so radical. This is why bhakti is open to everybody. Generally, all other types of dharmas you have to have a certain qualification for. Krishna says, we read very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, don't try to do somebody else's dharma. You're not qualified for that. You won't be able to maintain it. So to be a brahmana, you have to have the qualities of a brahmana. Right? So if you don't, you do what you do. Do the work of whatever you are qualified for, and by doing it properly, over time you'll progress. So generally, people would progress up the. If you were a vaishya, merchant person, and you followed your dharma properly, did it according to the rules. Your next life, maybe you could be a kshatriya or a warrior. Then if you did that for your whole life, you could become a brahmana. You see, so it's very little by little by little you make improvements. Bhakti, if that seed of bhakti is planted in anybody's heart, then it has the power to get rid of all the negative qualities and instill all of the good ones. So like I said, the dog eater can become a brahmana. You see, it has that transformative power that nothing else has, because it's Krishna. Krishna is acting there. He mentions in the Bhagavad Gita how he enters the heart with the shining lamp of knowledge. He gives us guidance. So it's like that. So it's so much more powerful than any other type of dharma. And then it's said by Shukadev Goswami in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse 12, "My dear king, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods. On account of a devotee's high grade of Krishna consciousness, even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it can be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body." Some commentators on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, including Jiva Goswami, I think it's Jiva Goswami, and it may also be Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they say that it means ultimately all the good qualities of Krishna develop in the devotees, even more than the devatas. They said even the worshippers of the devatas, the demigods, can get their qualities. So this even goes further than that. Oh my God. I've got a little message here saying people can't hear, and I'm not sure why. Oh, okay. That was a little problem on his end, I guess. I thought, oh my God. Okay, so he says, and so Prabhupada gives an example. He says, a practical example from today. He says, we experienced that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness, a lot of the people who joined were young, is unattached to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He becomes completely freed. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, attending the theater, and dancing. And the presumption, of course, is that especially people here in the Western countries were not free of such things previously. He says, so he saw practical examples himself. Okay, so now we move into the two qualities that are associated with Bhava Bhakti. And like I said, we already have a happiness in the previous stage, but just not as strong. So now it comes into really powerful status. So Prabhupada calls it happiness in Krishna consciousness. And he says, Srila Rupa Goswami has analyzed the different sources of happiness. He has divided happiness into 3 categories, which are, and we're going to take them one at a time. The first one is happiness derived from material enjoyment. And the problem with that one, a couple of them, is that there is no preventing one's falling down from material happiness, so it's not very stable. Prabhupada says, these people do not know that at any moment they can be kicked out of their material situation, so they are very unstable. And then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore said that the advancement of material knowledge, this is a different one here, advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish because it causes one to forget his real identity by its glimmer. This is doom for him because this human form of life is meant for getting out of material contamination. By the advancement of material knowledge, people are becoming more and more entangled in material existence. they have no hope of being liberated from this catastrophe. So this endeavor to enjoy materially, even if it's kind of successful, it kind of implied there may be some success there, but then it's just leading you deeper and deeper into the cycle of birth and death. So that's a problem with it. So usually you can lose it at any time. It's very unstable. But even if you're kind of successful, it's leading you down the wrong path. All right? So that's the problem with material happiness. Then there's happiness derived from identifying oneself with the Supreme Brahman. And Prabhupada says, and there is even every chance of falling down from the spiritual happiness derived out of identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman. So he says also that can be unstable. And he says there are many instances, especially in India, where these Mayavadi sannyasis descend to the material platform again. He says people who are even close to liberated. So it's unstable. And then there's the happiness derived from Krishna consciousness, which, as you should anticipate, is the best. And he says happiness derived from pure devotional service is the highest because it is eternal. So it doesn't have those problems. And then it says, but a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness will never return to any sort of material platform, however alluring and attracting they may be. He always knows that no material welfare activities can compare to the spiritual activity of Krishna consciousness. And why? This is in the Narada Pancharatra. It is also said that any person who has developed even a small amount of devotional service doesn't care a fig for any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or the 5 kinds of liberation. So it's eternal, stable, and it's way better. Okay, it's just better. Once you have it, the other things seem very insignificant. So the quality is better. It's stable. It doesn't lead you to anything problematic, only to more devotional service. Now we're moving into the second quality is Sadurlabha of Bhava Bhakti. Prabhupada also he says that any pure devotional service has this quality. That it's the rareness of pure devotional service. Because, like I said, there's a certain amount, even in the earlier stages. This one it really fully manifests in Bhava Bhakti, or really strongly manifests in Bhava Bhakti. But it's also true of Sadhana Bhakti to a lesser degree. When Prabhupada starts out with that, he says, in the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities. This is spiritual life, not bhakti. There are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, even an executor of these processes is without any material desire. Even if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. We saw that in Bhagavad Gita. That people, there's the 4 kinds in the 7th chapter, 4 kinds of sukritas, people who perform pious activities. Also, we saw that Krishna was telling Arjuna to perform his duty without material desire. That simply led up the yoga ladder. In order to get pure bhakti, so you could get mixed bhakti that way, but in order to get pure bhakti, right? Because what would happen is if you went up the yoga ladder, you become a jnani or a yogi. Then, after many, many lifetimes, you may get the association of a pure devotee, and then you become a pure devotee. It's the Sukritas, the 4 pious people. They, Prabhupada also said, are mixed devotees, and by the association of a pure devotee, they can gain pure devotional service. So, by these other things, you don't get pure devotional service. It has to come with the mercy of the pure devotees. And therefore he says, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 19:151, it is said, by the mercy of the spiritual master who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. Lord Chaitanya gives an analysis of all the jivas. Actually, in his teachings of Rupa Goswami, where it says that the jivas that most of the jivas are in non-human forms, so they're not going to be eligible. Most of those in human forms are living outside the Vedic principles. Most of those who are following the Vedas are just doing it in a ritualistic way. So it's only the rare soul going up and down, traveling throughout all the universes, that gets the seed of bhakti. So this applies even, this rarity applies even to just beginning the process of devotional service, even sadhana bhakti. And then in the second one here, it talks more about bhava in particular. In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 18, Narada also says to Yudhishthira, "My dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how fortunate you are, because for others all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even be dreamt of." So when devotional service, the level of bhava bhakti, we'll discover, is where we are completely we enter into the way that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur expresses it is that the spiritual energy descends upon us. We no longer that's where we become transcendental. Actually, we begin to understand. We clearly understand our eternal relationship with Krishna. So all the material contaminations are gone. And so this is very, very rare. It's rare enough to attain sadhana bhakti, but it's even so much more rare. And why? You can see the reason why. Because Krishna is, and we'll see even for the next one in Prema, that Krishna is attracted even by our beginning devotional service, but how much? So when we come to the stage of bhava, it's so intense that Krishna associates with us. So it doesn't come easy. You have to really be ready for it. You have to get the mercy. Krishna's going to vet you very carefully before he gives you that kind of devotion, where he's going to, like here he's describing how he's associating with the Pandavas. Rupa Goswami gave that. So when there's bhava, then there's extreme reciprocation from Krishna. So it's more rare. So it's very rare that happens. It takes some special mercy.
Direct association.
Well, you get in bhava, it develops over time. At first, you get what's called spurtis. Krishna just appears before you or in your heart for a moment, and then disappears. It's called spurti. But you see him. Can you imagine? Not just the deity form, but you see Krishna. So it's very powerful. So that's not easy to get. And now we have the two final ones that are associated with prema. And Prabhupada calls it the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. The Sanskrit word means like it's super concentrated. So Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmananda, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion-fold, it still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. So then it becomes, this is more concentrated than the previous happiness. We heard the happiness that makes liberation seem very insignificant, or all other types of material things seem inferior. Here it says even if you take that happiness of liberation and multiply it 1 trillion-fold, it's not even close. In the Hari Bhakta Suddhodaya, Prahlad Maharaj, while satisfying Lord Nrsingadev by his prayers, says, "My dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. I now consider the happiness of Brahmananda to be no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth compared to this ocean of bliss." Okay? So the happiness at the level of prema, it's similar to that in bhava, but it's extremely concentrated. It's more deeply intensive. Okay. And then the last one is it attracts Krishna Karshini, and this is also the level of prema. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that devotional service attracts even Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. Okay? And then he gives the example of Arjuna and the Pandavas. In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna appeared in his universal form, Arjuna prayed, "My dear Krishna, I thought of you as my cousin brother, and so I have shown disrespect to you in so many ways, calling you Krishna or friend. But you are so great that I could not understand." So that was the position of the Pandavas. Although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the greatest among all greats, he remained with those royal brothers, being attracted by their devotion, by their friendship, and by their love. That is the proof of how great this process of devotional service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The mechanism, as I understand it, it's this mechanism of gratitude. That Krishna has everything, and we're very small. Everybody compared to Krishna is very small, and so there's nothing he requires. Right? He can have anything he wants in no time. He can fulfill any of his desires. He can have the whole world be anything he wants it to be. If he wants everything to be different, he can make it everything different right now. But he doesn't, because what he has discovered, I guess the only thing what he knows, I guess, is that just being able to have everything you want and be in full control, we think that would be really good, right? We think, boy, I'd like at least to have a little more control, have more of the things I want. But Krishna doesn't think that's very good. I put words in his mouth and say it's boring. That's really boring, and What he really wants is relationship. And so he creates other entities that have some independence, that are not under his control. We talked about that he's the supreme controller, but we can't say when I commit a sinful action that Krishna made me do it. Right? He gives us independence. That means there can be real relationship. And so, what happens is that, and he likes the attitude of service. He feels grateful. It's like Prabhupada sometimes says, a little child will give something insignificant to his parents, and the parents will feel so much love for the child. They can get whatever the child gave them. It's not hard. Something better, right? They make something, they try to cook something for you and it's not very good even, But, because they did something for you, you feel so touched. So Krishna is grateful. Here in this world, right, if we're powerful, we have a high position, right? And people have to do things for us, we have a tendency to go, "Oh, that's not good enough. I want more. For me, that's all you did for me is this?" Right? People are not satisfied. They're not grateful. I deserve more. But Krishna is grateful. And he wants to do something in return. See, it's not just that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer because everybody wants to serve him. They're all attracted to him. But he doesn't just sit there and enjoy. He wants to help. He wants to return the favor. He's even doing it for us now.
Yes.
We're not serving him. Well, we're trying a little now, but for a long time we weren't serving him, and Krishna was there in our hearts. He sent devotees to us. He sent his Bhagavad Gitas. He's trying to get us back. He was serving us even when we weren't serving him. So it's an amazing. This is the great mystery, How the controller of everything, the source of everything, is grateful to small creatures like us for our service. And he's attracted by that. He wants them to be with us, so he can exchange that. That to him is beautiful. It's Leela. That's how he spends his time. That's what he wants. So this is a deep mystery. So that finishes the first chapter, and we'll be moving on, through the first 19. I think in the very beginning here, let's see, can I get to In the very beginning, I think it mentioned um, in the preface, I think it said, did I mention that? Well, I meant to include that. I don't think I did, but there's four divisions. They're called the different sides of the ocean: eastern, western, northern, and southern oceans. And in each of the oceans, they're called waves, or like sections. So that we're covering the eastern section, the eastern ocean, and there are four waves in there. There's like an overview of bhakti, which we really began here. We understood what how the pure devotion looks like, and we saw some of the qualities of it. And then we're going to also understand. Then we're going to understand, sadhana bhakti. We're going to understand bhava bhakti. We're going to understand prema bhakti. So what is there's only three. There's four waves, and I guess there's just a quick summary. Then there's kind of an overview, and then there's a discussion of those different parts of it. And so we'll get the focus will be on sadhana bhakti, and we'll get just a brief introduction to bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, and that'll for the bhakti shastri that's sufficient. The other topics get pretty far out, deep into bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, so we won't deal with those sections. So this is the first 19 chapters that we're going to do, and that's what it's going to be here. The Eastern Ocean with its four waves.